Hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time round we got something a little bit off beam, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's a Renault Clio Williams 3 in this case, which is a very interesting car in its own way. The era of the hot hatchback, started with the Golf GTI, probably examples before that really, but that was the real first stab at it. And then in the 1980s things really warmed up with the Peugeot 205 GTI, Renault's own 5 GT Turbo, and the Golf GTI and other cars as well. But Renault were always in the swim really. They had the 5 Gordini and the 5 Gordini Turbo in the 70s, which sort of was dipping a toe in the water really. But Renault's at this time sort of really couldn't do any wrong. In 1977 they invented the turbo engine for Formula One. They actually were the first people to put a turbo on a Formula One racing car, and the rest is history. By 1985 every Formula One car had a turbocharged engine, and it got to the stage where they were winding the boost up for practice and they were turning out 1500 brake horsepower from 1500 cc. So to put that into perspective, even today a Bugatti Veyron is an 8-litre 16-cylinder or a Chiron, and they're developing 1200 horsepower. And this engine 40 years ago was developing more horsepower from 1500 cc. So they were really pushing the boundaries. And then in 1989 they came out with that glorious V10 with pneumatically controlled valves. Which were, instead of valves with conventional valve springs, they used compressed nitrogen actually to open and close the valves on the engine for super high RPM. Other people were using diamond encrusted carbon, which they put on the camshaft lobes because anything else would simply wear out, just like that at the high RPM that Formula One engines worked at. But Renault were really pushing the boundaries with technology. And in '94, when this car was built, they were really on a high. They were celebrating their phenomenal success. They were working with the Williams Formula One team. They were supplying engines for them, and they wanted to go into rallying. Why can't we do as well on gravel as we are on tarmac? So they came up with this, the Renault Clio Williams, the one as it subsequently became, and it was a homologation special for Group A and Group N rallying. And they were supposed to make 2,500 was the amount that they were intended to churn out. They actually ended up making a lot more than that, and after producing a collector's edition, the Williams 1, they then went on to produce a Williams 2 and 3, much to the delight of the people who bought the original Williams 1s. Not. But anyway, they're an extremely rare car now. A little bit of research I've done, there are about 13 of these left in the UK, the Williams 3, and I think the total for Clio Williams 1, 2 and 3 left in Britain is comfortably under 130. It's amazing the way these things creep up on us really. You know, this is a classic car now. It's 25 years old, it's a classic car, and you know, it seems like yesterday when you spotted one on the road really. Great car. I had a Renault 5 GT Turbo in the 80s, which I used as an everyday car for a little while. Absolutely fantastic bit of kit. Everything was built down to extreme lightweight. I remember I was driving up in North Yorkshire in the 5 GT Turbo. I hit a pretty bad bump in the road, and all of a sudden the steering wheel went from that to that. And I pulled over, had a look. Suspension was fine, but the front subframe had actually bent in. The whole front subframe had actually gone V-shaped on the near side. And that was the end of that. So you don't really expect subframes to bend on cars while you're driving them, but anyway, this one did. But otherwise, great car. But this is still, with all its ABS and electric windows and even the sunroof, the electric sliding glass sunroof, is still under a ton in weight. It's 980 odd kilos. And that's where they get the performance from. And of course, as I mentioned, they were making world-beating, high-tech, cutting-edge engines. So for them to come up with a 2-litre engine for this car, which was as good as it got, was not particularly difficult, really. So the 205 GTI was a great car. It sort of really reset the benchmark, dare I say it, in 1984 when it came out. I remember a friend of mine, I was of all things, in an open-air Shakespeare production, And a friend of mine bought a 205 GTI new, one of the original 1.6s in 85, that would be. And he said, come on, let's take it for a drive. So he very kindly let me drive it. And I couldn't believe how absolutely fizzing with excitement this car was. It was absolutely alive. And then I started driving around Bentham quickly, and normally with front-engine cars, front-engine front-wheel drive cars, they plough on. Because all the weight's at the front, you get understeer, you turn the wheel, and the car tries to carry on going. Not with the 205 GTI. I was absolutely shocked to discover that the back end started to go out. It went into oversteer around the corner. Not what you expect from a front-engine front-wheel drive car at all. To be honest, it scared the life out of me the first time I did it. But you get used to it. You know, once you've been there, so you know what to expect. But fast forward to this car in 1994, as I say, it's sort of, the 205 GTI was slightly king of the hill in the 1980s, although I'm sure 5GT Turbo and Golf GTI owners would argue with that. But the 205 GTI was a pretty amazing act, really. Renault were keen to get back on top. Why not? They've got all this competition success. So they come out with the Clio Williams. And I'm going to be just doing a couple of very simple jobs on this, hardly worth mentioning really. But what I'm then going to do is take the car on the road, and a friend of mine who is a very, very good racing driver, a guy called Iain, he's driven in Indy cars, Formula One, he's been there and done it. We went to Alton Park some years ago with my 5GT Turbo actually, and he taught me how to drive a front-engine front-wheel drive car. So we're going to take this car out on the road, and I'm going to do a little bit of ducking and diving with the car on some suitable bends, and we'll put the car through its paces and see why this car has sort of developed a legendary status as one of the, if not the, hot hatch of the 1990s. So let's take a look. Out on the road, and I must confess this is my first driving experience in a Clio Williams. This car is just alive. It's fizzing, it's really just sizzling. It's just saying, please, please, please drive me. I can't imagine this sort of interaction really in an electric car. For all the EV technology and the way it's going, will an electric car ever be as engaging as this or as interactive? I doubt it. That, if anything, that's probably what's making these cars and others like them so desirable now. They're just such fun. I mean, for anybody who wants to do anything other than get from A to B, it's about fun. It's about driving. I've done a couple of little jobs on this car. I've sorted just minor things really. I've sorted the gear change out. It wasn't returning to the mid position. The lever was sticking either side of the gate, so I've just attended to the mechanism and made it all as it should be. Little things like that make a big difference to the driving experience and the pleasure. But the one thing this car really is well known for, apart from its straight line performance, power to weight, under a ton, 140 brake horsepower. One of the things that, or a touch more actually, one of the things that really is the standout feature of this car is the handling and road holding. So I'm going to just explore that. As I mentioned earlier, my friend Iain taught me how to, some years ago, taught me how to get the most out of a front engine front wheel drive chassis. And there are various tricks of the trade that racing drivers use and things like that. I'm just going to use a couple of those. One of them is obviously to make sure that the gear changes are quick. Don't use the synchromesh. Use double declutching, which is a very old technique that was used in the very early part of the 20th century before cars had synchro mesh on the gearbox, synchronized meshing of the gears. So we use double declutching. We use heel and towing, where my toe is on the brake pedal and my heel is doing the throttle work simultaneously, so I can meter out the braking coming up to a junction or a roundabout or a bend, and I can also blip the throttle to do the double declutching as well. And the last aspect of this is about shifting the weight, getting the weight in the right place on the car, and that's left foot braking. So what we do is just set the car up for a bend, get everything nicely, the throttle position right, and this is not about braking per se. So we've done the braking, we're setting the car up for a bend, we start through the bend and we just dab the brake with the left foot to get the weight of the car, to shift the weight into the right place. So the car is already set up for the bend. If it's a left-hand bend, the weight is on the right of the car. We dab the brakes to actually get the weight in the right place, get the inertia set up, and then power through the bend. So it's a combination of double declutching, heel and towing, and left foot braking. A lot of modern cars, you can't actually left foot brake anymore. Mercedes, years ago, I think it's over 20 years now, they tend to be a bit over nannying sometimes, Mercedes, with their safety features. And if you left foot brake in an automatic Merc, for example, it will just cut the engine right down to idle if you let it. So that's far too intrusive for this sort of thing. Don't try this at home, or if you do, be extremely careful. Obviously be mindful of traffic regulations and speed limits and things like that. But this car is just made for things like that. It's made for it. So, if you're going to road test this car, you've got to do it properly, haven't you? Yeah, of course, one of the beauties of these hot hatchbacks, one of the enduring things, is that you can drive them really slowly, and they're great for putting the shopping in, tiny for supermarket car parks, immensely practical, comfortable. You can fold the seats down, all that sort of thing. But there is another side to them as well, and it's this. Left foot braking into third, double declutch into second, left foot braking again, double declutch, left foot braking, well, not only does this car have serious credentials on the road, but it has one or two interesting features. One of which is this rather whizzy little thing here, which is a suit carrier. So, instead of having to hide your dead bodies in the boot, you can run over them and then put them in there. How fantastic is that? And the other thing that, now listen very carefully, 007, is this rather whizzy piece of kit here. Just the thing for walking up behind your enemies and finishing them off. This actually came with the car originally. It's got the Renault logo on it. It's so that you can put the ignition key in and then put the immobiliser on the dashboard. But yes, marvellous really. Well, thanks for watching another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back soon.